We're going to be out the window by the time the evening's done. So let's start. Here's a question to the entire panel. John Lewis once said that Rosa Parks, Billy Graham, and Martin Luther King Jr. helped to change and shape him. Whose example, voice, or courage is influencing you now, and how? Josh, take it away.
Inspirations for where we are right now. Personally, right, as someone who has just come off a special election, went into an area that needed so much work because our party had not been investing and we had not been getting our message out to people. And pushed in so far, and then to be able to have the opportunity to have a special election for Senate fall right behind it, and to be able to get into a Senate race and continue building on what we just did for an opportunity to take a state that no one else out there believes can turn blue and make it happen. John Ossoff is a huge inspiration in my life right now. The work that we are doing here in Florida is what he did in Georgia 5 years ago. He has shown that it can be done, and we're following that path. I also want to say, we're here because of Congressman John Lewis. And I was in DC earlier this week, and I had the pleasure of having a dinner with a few of his former staffers and hearing the stories and the memories. And as I look around this room, there are not a lot of us here today who look like Representative John Lewis. And it's important to note that what we are feeling now, the threats that are present for us today, threats that are truly 10 years ago would have been unimaginable. Right? Like we thought it was bad when George W. Bush was president. George W. Bush didn't get scared of the Democratic nominee for mayor in New York City and have his attorney general start up denaturalization papers. Whatever your opinion of Zoran is there, the fact that a political opponent, a natural-born American citizen, that their response is to create a process to remove your American citizenship and remove the threat you pose from this country. This is new to all of us. But there are people who have been experiencing threats like these for a much longer time in this country. And we should be looking to the action taken by brave men like John Lewis and his fellows during that time, because they had to do this for so much longer.
Thank you, Josh.
Hi, everyone. So I'll start off by saying I'm not a history buff, and it's not like I know everything about Rosa Parks or Martin Luther King or Congressman Lewis, but I can tell you I know enough. The one thing I do know is all of them had one thing in common. They stood up. They stood up for what was right. They stood up for their rights. They stood up in the time when it was dangerous. They stood up at their own peril. They went to prison. And some of them ended up dead. Beat. John Lewis led a march where he got beat. And so what I want to say is, This is our time now. We are each and every one of these people. We are the Rosa Parks that don't want to give up our seats. We are the John Lewises that are doing good trouble. We are each and every one of these Martin Luther Kings that need to march on Washington, D.C. We need that million-man march. We need to show Donald Trump, because let me tell you one thing, there's nobody that knows Donald Trump better than me, especially in this room. And I can tell you one thing, he's not scared of the DOJ, he's not scared of the media, he's scared of one thing, and that's you, the people. He's scared of each and every one of you. That's why we need to make sure our voices are loud and heard. And that's why take your opportunity and be loud and clear.
The person I would point to for inspiration is John Brown. He was an abolitionist in Kansas, all the way back to the Civil War. And when we're thinking about John Lewis, I think it's very important to remember that the civil rights movement didn't begin with Martin Luther King Jr., and it didn't end with John Lewis. It's part of a fight for freedom, equality, and justice that started at the Constitutional Convention and the Declaration of Independence before that. And it's continuing today with the fight against lawlessness, racism, xenophobia, authoritarianism, and hate. For him, violence was an option, and how could it not be when you're dealing with the worst atrocity in American history? John Brown should tell us that radicalism is not the same thing as extremism. John Brown was a radical. Abraham Lincoln was a radical. And when the norm is Donald Trump, I don't want to be anything near normal.
Hello. So, for me, there's so many women that flip through my mind when I'm asked this question. So I'm thinking of the women who dressed as men and served in the American Revolution, or were pirates, or were like Joan of Arc. You know, all of these are people who had to change their gender expression in order to fulfill what they really wanted to do. I think about Betty Friedan, who was part of starting the National Organization for Women, or Audre Lorde, who just always moves me to tears. So there's a ton of women whose names I know, and then there's an equal number of women who I know I don't know their names, right? Women who worked alongside their famous artist partners, and yet they were doing a lot of the sculpting and painting, or were helping with the math for some of their science, partners and husbands. So for me, I think part of what's inspiring is both the women who I've seen, blaze like a comet, and those who just kind of keep the world moving and the kids fed and, on a real budget, make Christmas happen for a little family. There's a lot, I think, of women out there, and people, right? People to inspire. But for me, particularly resonates with the women out there who inspire all of us.
I would honestly say I would not be the man I am today apart from Black history. I believe that there are always two ways of looking at any historical action or figure. There's a way in which takes your power away, and there's a way in which it empowers you. See, when I would read the story of Frederick Douglass and how he could have been murdered if he was caught learning how to read, that stuck with me. See, when I was growing up, I remember as early as 3rd grade being labeled emotionally handicapped and slow learning disabled. So I never thought school was gonna be my way out. But as I would get older and I learned about his story, I said, there's no one looking to murder me for educating myself. Then I would fast forward and I would learn about the likes of Malcolm X, who, while in prison, would read the dictionary through and through until he improved his vocabulary. And I did the same thing. And then there was another man I learned about that gave me the hope that I could be great, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He said that anybody could be great because anybody could serve. And that's where I found my purpose, in my community. The very community that I have been fighting all my life to escape. I found my purpose. See, I come from a community where many of the young men are more likely to be in prison than finish high school. Where the young men in my program have probably seen more deaths than many of you collectively in your lifetime. So if it wasn't for the Frederick Douglasses, Malcolm X's, Martin Luther King's, John Lewis's of the world, I would not be here. They gave me hope that every trial that I inherited was for me to triumph and to use as a light post for the young people coming behind me. So I'm a beneficiary of historical figures like the ones my comrades mentioned, and I couldn't be prouder to be standing on their shoulders today. So thank you.